In this video, I will be covering the topic of time management. First, we will talk about why time management is important. Then, we will discuss 5 principles of time management. What is time management? That sounds kind of like a silly question, but I think it's a good thing to ask. Wikipedia has a fantastic definition of time management. Time management is a meta activity with the goal to maximize the overall benefit of a set of other activities within the boundary condition of a limited amount of time, as time itself cannot be managed because it is fixed. I think this is an important note. Time management is a meta activity. Basically, it is a kind of thinking about thinking type of thing. So you're not actually doing any particular task, you're just thinking about how are you going to do those particular tasks. And as humans, that's a really useful thing that we have kind of in our tool belt or tool set of things that we can do. No animals can do that. They just think about what's in the moment. They can't really think about like long-term planning. And we are able to kind of step back and abstract out like, okay, what are the potential scenarios that I could be in? And then we kind of look through those potential scenarios and find the best option. And that's what time management is. Trying to be the most effective with your time that you can be with this fixed amount of time that you have. Okay, so why do we even need to manage our time? I think a really important aspect of time is that it always is being spent, and it must be spent. What I mean by that is simply that we're always technically moving through time, and so it is constantly being spent. There's no stopping it. Notice the language we use to talk about time is in terms of money, which I think is a really good way to think about it for our purposes. Our choice regarding time is how intentional or unintentional we should be with our time. And this is a central aspect of time management. There's a lovely quote from the woman Annie Dillard. She says, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." This may seem obvious, but if you are not intentional about what you do with your time moment to moment, then you will not be intentional about what you do with your life as a whole. That's the point. So I think it is important to manage our time because we are actually managing our life. I mean life in like the uppercase sense of it. That is how you're spending your life. So if you want to know what are you doing with your life, look at what you're doing right now. If we don't choose what to make a priority and what to make important, then those things will choose us. Life happens, and if you don't know what is important to you and what you want to be, you'll always be tossed around in the world, constantly doing damage control. This brings me to the next reason to manage your time. If you manage your time, you can reach a final goal. So if you've sat down and thought about what you want to accomplish and the steps it will take to get you there, you're already on your way to achieving that goal. Managing your time enables you to reach what you want. Finally, managing your time relieves stress. This is something that has actually been documented in research. One academic group in the Netherlands did a literature review of time management studies from 1982 to 2004. The literature review found that good time management had a positive relationship to perceived control of time and job satisfaction, and had a negative relationship to stress. A negative relationship basically means that there's an inverse relationship. Increased time management means decreased stress level. Yes! Yeah! Now the findings actually were unclear on whether time management effectively improved academics, but it definitely decreases stress. So now that we understand why we should at least care about managing our time, let's talk about the 5 principles of time management. These time management principles aren't from one specific book or website. These are 5 principles that I extracted from multiple sources. These are time management principles that you find in just about any conversation about what good time management looks like. Number 1, clarity of purpose. This relates back to the why of time management. When you are managing your time, you must first decide what your end game is. There are various levels of goals you can have. Obviously, there's the level of what you want to accomplish in the moment, and that is determined and informed by what do you want to do in the day, which is related to what you want to accomplish in the week, which is connected to what you are trying to do in the month, and so on until you reach the level of what do I want to do with my life, and what is my goal for who I want to become. So there are these stacking levels of purpose. That final question, who am I and who do I want to be, is going to be the motivating factor, which informs all the other levels. In a sense, it is a top-down effect. You have to understand and keep in mind the bigger picture of who you are in order to give life and meaning to the tasks that happen on a daily basis. It is the anchor that weathers the storm. In every moment, you should remind yourself of what the bigger goal is. So this principle essentially says, know who you are and who you want to be. Make sure you understand how each of those levels, the moment, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, lifelong, all connects and drives you. Alright, out of this idea of knowing your purpose comes the next principle, prioritize. What you decide regarding the first principle will dictate how you prioritize your attention. As human beings, we, by design, must give our attention to something. As we choose what to give our attention to, we make value judgments about those things. The world is so full of things, an infinite amount of things. And as it happens, we are not infinite creatures. We can only take in a tiny portion of everything. As an example, maybe you are currently focused on what I am saying. You may be looking at the screen or just listening to me. As you focus your attention on me, there are all these things around you that you don't even notice. For example, maybe you're in your room and of course you aren't perceiving the color of the floor or the sheets on your bed. Or perhaps you're in the library and you're not focused on how many lights are on the ceiling or the person sitting a few desks down from you. The point is, you're not focused on these things because they do not have any immediate value to you. Now let's say you're in the library and that person a few desks down from you jumps up onto the table and starts shouting like a crazy person. I'd wager suddenly this video would no longer be important to you because someone is acting insane. You immediately would focus on that person and try to figure out if you were in danger, if something was wrong, or if you needed to get out of there, if you needed to fight someone. Suddenly that person, who up to that point was basically a formless object, takes center stage. Now, it may seem that I've gotten somewhat sidetracked from prioritizing. However, your attention is central to what you prioritize. You need to constantly evaluate and decide what is important. When we get our priorities correct, then we are able to accomplish the momentary goals all the way up to the long-range goals. The next principle is effectiveness, not efficiency. This principle is important in part because our society often pushes efficiency. Are you noticing a pattern here about goals? For example, a car has a fantastic system for transportation, the wheel. You may have heard of these things. Anyway, the wheel is really efficient, roughly speaking. It does a great job of moving things from one place to another. However, if that wheel is stuck in the mud or the ice, meaning a place with no friction, it doesn't matter how efficiently the wheel spins around, it won't get anywhere. The same is true for completing tasks. When you're deciding your priorities, you need to do the things first that are going to be effective in getting you where you want to be. What exactly does effective mean? Well, that's pretty context dependent. But the central idea is you need to do the thing that is going to get you the furthest with the least amount of effort. That's part of how you should decide what to do and when. It doesn't matter how perfect the color is that you chose for your design project if you spent an hour deciding it and now only have 15 minutes to work on the actual content of the project. Do the things that matter, do the things that connect to your goals. The next principle is eliminate the unnecessary. As college students, this may be one of the trickiest principles you will encounter. I always felt in college that everything was so concentrated and immediate. I mean, if you think about how we cram a lot of learning into 16 weeks, it's a little bit crazy. You've got 16 weeks to make your grades, work a job, develop relationships, do extracurricular activities, and still have time for family. It can feel like you have to do everything or you'll be missing out. But one of the most powerful things you can do to control your time is learn to say no to things. It may seem obvious what kinds of things you should say no to. Things like going out and partying the night before a big exam is probably something you should cut out. And really, the whole partying thing maybe would be a good thing to get rid of entirely. Stop it! It's bad for you. But there are other more subtle things you may need to say no to. For example, let's say you're in an American government class and there is a study group that is getting together. Let's say something you know about yourself is that you're pretty bad at staying on topic when you study with other people, especially the people in this study group. It may sound good that you're going to study with this group of people, but ultimately you need to say no. It is not going to be an effective and productive use of your time, because inevitably you're going to get off topic and you're not actually going to study. So a good rule of thumb is that if you can cut it out, then you should. There's a quote from the Collected Sayings of Muad'Dib. Arrakis teaches the attitude of the knife, chopping off what's incomplete and saying, now it is complete because it's ended here. I really like this quote because it has many layers to it and it means several things at once. For our purposes, the idea I'd like to extract is that oftentimes pruning away and removing things can actually bring something to its full completeness. Defining the boundaries of who you are as a person actually helps you define who you are. If you're trying to do too much or spend your time in counterproductive ways, then you are not reaching fully who you can be and who you want to be. In cutting things out, it gives you time and energy to do the things that will cause you to reach your goals. Now it's complete because it's ended here. The final principle is do one thing at a time. In recent years, studies have indicated that multitasking isn't really a thing. Now, you may want to argue with me about this and say you personally can do multiple things at once. I would disagree, at least in the sense that, okay, maybe you're more efficient at switching your attention between one thing and another, but you are not able to technically do two things at the same time. It is impossible, as our attention can literally only focus on one thing at a time. Whatever you think about multitasking, I think just about anyone should concede that they do their best when they are able to focus on the task at hand. Jumping in between one task and another is inefficient. It takes time to orient to the new task, so if you try to do multiple things at the same time, you will constantly reorient yourself to the new thing, thus slowing you down. So those are the 5 time management principles. Time management is inseparably intertwined with goals. Remember that the bedrock foundation for time management is to know yourself. So if you're struggling with spending your time wisely, take some time to think about who you are and who you want to be. This is not an easy thing to do, especially in our society. Who you are constantly shifts and changes, and you must be intentional about making choices that guide you toward something good. It's your choice. Thanks for listening. Until next time.